Today, I want to talk a little bit about how we bring mindfulness into our everyday lives and off the cushion. Most of the time in this class, I talk about meditation in relation to building our ability to be mindful through sitting in a formal way on the cushion. But my philosophy on meditation is I feel like it's kind of pointless if it doesn't help us in our everyday life. Sitting in peace on the cushion is wonderful to be able to find that space, to have that moment, especially if we don't have it often. But eventually, we want to get to the point where we're able to do it for ourselves in our everyday lives, when we're able to recognize what's happening inside us in the moment when we're at work, when we're in conversations, when we're driving, when we're cooking, when we're at the grocery store, whatever it may be. So that we want to begin to recognize or really be able to listen to ourselves in a deep inner listening way that we do on the cushion, but in everyday life. Because that's where things become really fruitful and where we can really begin to make adjustments that are more helpful to us in our life. When we're approaching mindfulness on the cushion in our everyday lives, we're bringing this sense of tenderness and compassion to our experience. And that's, as you may know, not something we bring often to our lives. Lives can be very hard a lot of times, and I don't mean circumstantially hard, but in the way that we approach our lives can be in a very hard way because we're conditioned to produce results, achieve goals. These sorts of things are sort of, they have a sense of hardness to them, like a plowing, right? So when we begin to really deeply listen to ourselves, we notice it sometimes can be hard in the beginning because we aren't used to doing it. It's just like a muscle, like any muscle. It doesn't mean we're deficient in any way. It just means we don't have practice at it. So the softness we bring when we're listening is very different. It's a different state of awareness or allowing, right, if you will, than we are accustomed to bringing to our daily experiences. So it can at first feel like uncomfortable, like I'm not doing it right, like something's off. And usually when we get those feelings, we shy away from that thing because we think something's wrong. But that sense of something being a little off or, just not really understanding it can also come in when we're bringing something new, when we're bringing in a different sense of being in our lives. So I say that because if you find yourself experiencing that when you're trying to bring that listening in and that tenderness and that allowing in, that you recognize that it's a normal part of the process, right? So not to give up on it because it feels that way in the beginning. But the sense of listening in the moment, how do we do that? Because that's really difficult, right? The number one reason it's so difficult is because we are typically in a doing mode. And we're in this, like I said, like a sort of hard doing mode. It's very productive oriented. And so we're in our heads. That's sort of where that experience lives, in the head. And we're thinking, and we're planning, and we're strategizing, and we're organizing, and we're, shuffling and juggling, and all of that's happening in our heads. And if we live in that state for 8 hours a day minimum, then moving out of that state is going to be, one, challenging, and two, it's going to feel foreign. It's going to feel uncomfortable and like, well, I don't understand what this is, right? So it's important for us to start, if we live in that sort of environment most of the day, which I think probably a lot of us do, if not most of us, because we're working all the time. it's important for us to bring the intention to that experience of listening, right? So, how do we do that logistically? We can look at our schedule, like give ourselves 5 minutes before we start our workday, sit down, look at the calendar, and say, okay, where can I intentionally schedule in mindfulness moments? And it seems so mundane to do it that way. But if we are people who are in a state where we're constantly working and we're in that sort of productive mode all the time, we probably need to schedule that in until it becomes part of our habit. And then we don't have to schedule it anymore. It will become second nature. So we can begin that way. 5 minutes in the day, say, okay, I have a break between, from 10 to 10:15 where I have a break between meetings, for example. So I'm going to schedule in just even a 1 minute, right? Check in, where am I? And we can do that several times in the day just to give us a moment. And what does the check-in look like? The check-in looks like, how does my body feel in this moment? We're pulling our awareness out of our minds, out of our heads, and down into our bodies. So we're saying, how do my feet feel on the floor right now? How does the chair below me feel? How am I sitting in the chair? Am I like leaning? Am I forward? Am I tense? So these like very, practical ways of checking in with our bodies. We can start to get more subtle with it at some point. How do my hands feel on whatever the hands are on? And we can get to the point where we start asking ourselves this while we're doing other things. So if we're in a meeting and we're just listening, we're not really talking, participating in it, we can do it then, because we know we are able to multitask, right? Because we do it all the time. So we can use that ability to multitask to bring awareness into our actual physical experience in the moment. So I'm in a meeting and I'm listening to my boss drone on about something that has nothing to do with me. So I'm just checking in, how does my body feel right now? How does my breathing feel right now? Am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? Very, very simple, practical sort of way of bringing mindfulness to our current experience in the moment. And that's in a work setting. And we can get to the point at some point where we're actually doing that periodically throughout the day without having to set a reminder to do it. I myself hate reminders. I feel like I'm inundated by notifications all the time. I have them all turned off because I don't want to, I don't want to be like totally pinged all the time. So that doesn't work for everybody. But it can be a way of starting, until we get to the point where we can just do that automatically. Like, oh, really stressed, having a really stressful day. How does the stress feel in my body? It feels tense. It feels like I haven't taken a deep breath. So we use the breath. The breath is an amazing tool for bringing us back into the present moment. And the actual physical sensation, the physical act of taking in a deep breath and exhaling a deep breath, they say activates the vagus nerve, which calms us. So it brings that stress level down. We could do that once, we could do it 3 times, 10 times, however much time we need. So we get to know the sensations in the body in the moment that it's happening. If we're in a conflict with somebody and we're feeling some, like they're not listening to us or they're trying to get one over on us or whatever the conflict looks like, we can just take a moment to feel, what does this feel like in my body right now? I feel, again, tense. That comes up a lot in these emotions. I'm feeling some anger. Oh, but below the anger, I'm feeling taken advantage of, or I feel like I'm being deceived or lied to, or they're trying to take something away from me. Is that true? Is that really happening? It might be. It also might be that we're projecting something from our past experience onto a situation in the current moment. So that's just kind of an example of how we can kind of go deeper with these questions, right? But it all starts with checking in how we're feeling in the moment in the body. because the body exists only in the present. It can't exist in the past as much as we might want to do, and it can't exist in the future. So it only exists in the present. So we use the body as the vehicle that brings us back into the present moment. And we're at the grocery store. I use this example all the time, even though I hardly ever go grocery shopping anymore. My husband does it all. We're standing in line and we're busy. We got stuff to do. We got two things. Three people in front of us shopping for a month, right? We're impatient. We're like, why doesn't this place have slow check? Or whatever, So we can pause for a moment and just feel like, okay, what am I feeling in my body right now? So I know I'm feeling irritated. That's what I'm saying. That's the label I'm attaching to the feeling. But what am I actually feeling, right? I'm feeling restless, feeling, like the physical, like get down to the very granular adjectives that you would use to describe the sensations, not the concepts that we attach to them, if that makes sense. So we start to really get to know it. We're restless. We feel a forward momentum, like we want to move. We want to get on with things. We're feeling some sense of, what's the word? Like the person is inconveniencing us. Right? That experience became very personal all of a sudden. And it's not personal. It's not personal. That gets in the way a lot. So we pause and we notice that that's the experience that's happening in the body. And we don't want to have it, right? It's unpleasant. And that's why we're like spinning all these other things out from that. So what's happening in the body? Okay. So can I just take a breath and allow myself to be in this moment? Okay. So it's going to take me longer to get through the grocery store than I thought. Okay. I'm just going to breathe. I'm not going to get on my phone and distract myself, right? That's really what we do. In some ways it can be a great coping mechanism. Like it keeps us from maybe acting in ways we shouldn't, but it's actually not it's not healthy for us. It may be good for the people around us because it keeps us in check, but it's not healthy for us because again, we're ignoring the experience and we're leaving it and we're not learning anything from it and we're not taking any agency from it, right? It's really controlling us. So checking in, if we're really tired at the end of our day, all we want to do is lay on the couch, watch a show, scroll through social media, or if we're in bed and it's late, we've already done all of that stuff and we find ourselves in bed doing it more, getting lost in that. What do they call it? Yeah, or doom scrolling or like revenge scrolling, like getting your time back in your day or something. I don't know. But if we really check in with how we're feeling in that moment, we'll notice probably that we're not feeling better from doing it. We're feeling more tired. Maybe we're starting to compare ourselves to what we're seeing on the screen that's totally not real anyway. If we find that we can't detach ourselves from it, like, oh, just a little bit more, it's harmless. We're checking in with ourselves. That's when we're listening and we're knowing, okay, it's time to stop. It's time to stop. And maybe before we even get to that point, we're checking in before we, go too far into that. And we're saying, how am I feeling right now? I'm feeling really tired, really, really tired. Maybe it's too early to go to bed, but maybe instead of, watching 3 hours of TV, if any of us have that kind of time in the evenings, or scrolling through social media, we, really ask ourselves, well, what do I need in this moment to feel nurtured? Maybe we need to take a bath. Maybe we need to go for a walk. Maybe we need to meditate. Sometimes meditating can be hard to get to when you're tired, but you find that it's actually pretty invigorating on the other end. So bringing that sense of mindfulness, of checking in with the body, of being in touch with the experience of the sensations within the body in our everyday lives. Super valuable in these ways, right? Because when we're listening, we're reinforcing the relationship with ourselves, an inner relationship. We are building trust in the relationship we have with ourselves because we're starting to listen, right? And then we further build the trust by giving ourselves what we need. We ask, what do I need in this moment? I mean, you can actually physically ask it if it's helpful. What do I need in this moment? Maybe you don't know. Sometimes we don't, you know, and that tells you something. If you don't get an answer, we probably will get an answer if we're really listening. But if you don't really get an answer, if you're stuck in some sort of maybe confusion about it, that's an answer. It's an answer. It's something telling you maybe you're not listening enough. Well, I don't mean like in that moment, but I mean overall and throughout the course of your life. My relationships will disconnected from myself is what this is telling me. What can I do to build that? Right? So these are just all little, ways in which we continue to build a relationship with ourselves so we can be in our lives in a way that is connected. We often think about connection as being an external thing, right? That we want to have people that we're connected to in our lives for various reasons. And there, we do need that, absolutely. But our inner connection is so important and not something that we're ever really told how to do or told to do or given permission to do. But really, the external connections are illusions at best if we don't have an internal connection. Because our external connections will reflect the strength of our internal connection, right? The people we have around us will reflect our inner lives. So building the relationship through listening, through mindfulness, being very aware of what our experience is in the moment and what we need in that moment is really essential for living an authentic life, being in an existence that is true to ourselves. And that is where our power comes from, because that's where we can make choices, alterations in our lives that even can be very slight, but can make a really big difference. A small change in this direction can have a huge change in the trajectory of something going forward. So that's really why we do this. When people would ask me sometimes, why bother? It's just going to make you unhappy. And some of that can come up in the beginning if we haven't been listening to ourselves for a long time. I say this all the time. The first 2 years that I meditated, every time I sat down on the cushion, I cried. Every time, whether I was in public or not. And it's just because we have stuff in there that we aren't listening to, that we aren't giving to in a way that we need. And so, this practice of mindfulness that we do on the cushion is very applicable to our everyday lives. It's not like a sound bath where you come in and you relax and the sound is great and you feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful. I do those from time to time too. But there's nothing you can take from that, right? Like the sound isn't following you around all day. But our awareness is always there. And we strengthen it here on the cushion in a guided meditation in a formal way. So we can take those skills that we build in the meditation and take them out into our everyday lives. And so one thing I'll challenge y'all with when you leave here is, I don't know how you exist in your cars when you're driving. I would challenge you when you leave to not have the radio on, have no sound on in the car, and drive to wherever you're going next in silence. And if you don't ever do that, just see what that experience is like. Because that's taking this cocoon, right? I mean, everybody talked about how good it feels to be in here on a Saturday morning with this space where we can just settle and be at peace. But what if your car could be that for you too? It's just a little smaller cocoon than this, right? And you could bring that, and that's like a transition into your everyday life. Now, I'm not saying that like every circumstance in your life, every situation you're in your life has to be like this gentle little cocoon. That's not practical, right? We're not monastics. We're not going to be able to be in that state all the time. They're not even able to. So, but just practicing that, like bringing that into your day. What is it like to get in the car after here and just be in that silence? Not respond. Nothing on your phone is that important. Like unless someone's in their end of life process, probably nothing is so important that you need to look at your phone right away. Just see what that experience is like. And then when you get to the next location, before you jump right out of your car, just sit there for a second and check in. Turn the car off, check in with yourself. Where is my body right now? Where are my hands? How am I sitting? Where are my feet? Just a real simple way of starting to build that awareness. Using the car is a really great way because most of us are in our cars all the time. And it's a very contentious place to be, especially in Dallas. Like the drivers are crazy here. so, so, I offer that to you as just, one little practical thing that you could take out of here today and see how it is. But we're always, always, always able to check in with ourselves and just say, where am I right now? And not even asking emotions, right? Not even getting into the emotions, but just the physical sensations. How am I feeling in my feet? How are my knees? How am I feeling in my seat? All of those kinds of things. Let's go ahead and have a sit. So we'll begin by just coming into our seated posture. And ideally, the posture is there as a supportive vehicle for the meditation. So we want to be dignified in our posture, feeling strong and confident in the way that we're holding our bodies and the way we're sitting. Our spine is upright and our torso muscles are supporting the posture in a loose and easy way. So not tensed up, not straining. Hands are on the lap, in the lap, wherever feels comfortable, just relaxed. We'll begin by taking in 3 deep inhales and exhales at your own pace. And then allow your breath to come back to its natural rhythm without forcing, without controlling, just letting it be the way it wants to be. And just noticing how the breath is in this moment, where it is in the body that it's breathing from, if it's in the belly or the ribs, or the chest predominantly, just noticing. Noticing how the body feels in this moment. You may feel completely relaxed and in the moment. And if so, just noticing. You may feel restless, perhaps some energy in the body that is active and wanting to move. And if so, just noticing. Whatever the experience is of your body right now, just notice it, let it be there without getting caught in the story of it. And just notice in this moment your hands. How do they feel in this moment? What do you notice about the way they feel, about what they feel? Just bringing awareness to those sensations without falling into thinking about it too much. Noticing the feeling of your legs beneath the hands, maybe the temperature of the room on the tops of the hands. Perhaps you notice tingling or any kind of pulsing. Perhaps you notice the texture of the clothing beneath your hands. Just bringing a sense of awareness into the experience of the hands in this moment. Just noticing. You may notice from time to time that your awareness leaves the hands, perhaps getting caught in thoughts, sounds, emotions, or other feelings within the body. And if that happens, just know that's perfectly normal. Just notice when you've left the hands. Acknowledge it. Perhaps give the thing a label, something neutral like thinking, sound, feeling, whatever it may be. And gradually, gently bring your awareness back to the sensations within the hands, releasing any judgment that may come up, just resting back in those sensations. If you notice there's some sense of hardness or force, some kind of determined concentration that's going into the awareness of the hands, just let that go a little bit. Loosen that grip just a bit and allow this awareness to take over without the brain engaging. Just noticing. Where are you now? In the final moments of this meditation, I invite you, if it feels right for you, to place your hand on your chest over your heart. Just sense the tenderness of this gesture, the care in it, sensing the solidness of the body and the warmth shared between the body and the hand. And offer yourself gratitude. Gratitude for making time in your day to make yourself a priority. Gratitude for following through on the listening and giving yourself the nurturing you need this morning. close out this meditation with this poem called Mindful by Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside the soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these, the untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass? When you're ready, you're welcome to open your eyes and come back into the room.